My name is Howie Schwartz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Crowded. We're thrilled to be here, and we wanted to again thank Microsoft for hosting us. This is going to be just a great night. This is our fourth or fifth meetup that we've done, and I always start off with the same bad joke, which is, the room's crowded, which is why we named the company that. Again, it's wonderful that everyone's here. We have a great panel tonight that I'm going to ask to introduce themselves in a second, but I have to set a timer because apparently I was told my last panel was too long. So I'm going to try to fix that this evening to make sure that everyone has enough networking time. Great, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Let's start with Darcy, and we're going to go all the way down. So your name, your title, what company you work with, and one fun fact about you.
Hey.
Hi, my name's Charlie Keinath. I'm the tech recruiting lead at Intersection. I've been doing recruiting here. I think it'll be my 10th year recruiting in the startup world come September. So I'm pretty getting old, And a fun fact about me was one time I was actually attacked by a shark. Oh.
Wait, how big was the shark? Was it like little shark?
I don't know. It was big enough to scare the you-know-what out of me, so big enough.
One of the main things that we're trying to do at Crowded, and the reason why we do these meetups, is that we believe that even though everything that we do is happening in Crowded on your mobile device or through a chatbot, a conversational interface, what we realized is that there was a lot to gain and a lot of value that we could provide to the community by bringing people together in the physical world, which is kind of a different thing and a little odd these days. And this is also immensely helpful for us because the feedback that we get from our employers on the panels and the employers who attend and the candidates, all of you guys who come about your profiles and the type of trends that you're seeing really directs, our vision. So, I like to say that we gain as much from this meetup series as hopefully each of you will tonight. So one of the trends that we see is the concept of a disconnect between what the different levels of software developers would be. So one of the classic things that we hear, and raise your hand if you face this, where there's an entry level or a junior level developer position, and you read down it and it requires 10 years plus of experience. Raise your hand if you've experienced that. So that's, well over 3/4 of the room. So, it's hard in such a fragmented, industry to kind of standardize this, but we found that one of the ways that we can help the community at large is trying to get, sort of a better understanding of that, and that when we're doing matching, when an employer posts a job in Crowded, when we're doing matching and thinking about job recommendations and things like that, thinking about understanding the experience level is really important. So you may have all the right skills, but the experience level is really important. So I'd love to go down the panel. We're going to start with Darcy. So Darcy and Tyler are going to tag team the event for us tonight. So I may direct some questions to one or the other of you, but feel free again to jump in, Tyler or Darcy, if you'd like to add something to your colleagues. We're going to go straight down the panel to Aviva. Thank you. Okay. So your definition of what a junior developer is, number of years of experience, things like that.
I think when I hear junior, developer, junior engineer, I usually think in that like 0 to maybe 2.5, 3 years type experience. That's kind of what first thing that comes to my mind. But it's also, what I can't stress enough is, going out there and, having a profile or a portfolio or some type of, mark in, GitHub or Bitbucket, that could kind of counterbalance that your years of experience with what you've actually built and done before. It kills me every time I look at an engineer, like a junior engineer's profile, right? Their LinkedIn, or their GitHub or their Bitbucket, and you see like all these commits, and then there's like a 6-month gap, and now they're like interviewing for a job. Like, you should keep up to date and make sure that you're doing those commits or projects along the whole spectrum, because that's stuff that like recruiters look at. But for me, I think my definition of a junior engineer is someone that's not fully self-supportive, right? Someone that's still going to need to ask a question or, not doing, pull requests or anything like that, but being able to, I guess, work with the team and absorb the knowledge from others. Anybody who's kind of above that, like, hey, I'm super autonomous, I could do my own stuff. I've been, I have 2 years of experience, but I've been coding since I'm 15 years old. That might be something where you're probably above that role.
So my next question is, and we're seeing this just increase, I'd say quarter over quarter over the past 2 years, is around boot camps. So how many people in the room attended or graduated or is currently attending a coding related boot camp? Raise your hand, nice and proud. So I never get this right. What is it? 20% or so? Interesting. Less than the last few meetups, which felt like it was a little bit more like 40, 50%. So we're gonna have to look at if that's seasonal around when the courses are happening, or see if that's trending downward through the summer. So I'll leave this open to anyone on the panel. If your company does hire from boot camps, I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience, and if you're evaluating those candidates in maybe a different way versus a candidate with a traditional CS degree.
Yeah, I think. So I'd say the last few hires that we made, we actually hired 2 people out of boot camps. I'd say the most important thing that, if you are in a boot camp, one of my personal, I guess, stigmas is, hey, at a boot camp, you learn how to fly the plane, but you don't learn how the engine works, right? So I think the most important piece of that is if you are at a boot camp, also just make sure you're supplementing that with maybe some core Comp Sci 101 classes, all right? You learn a lot and you'll put a lot of time and effort into the boot camp, and that's what it's all about, right? Like Michael Jordan wasn't an awesome free throw shooter because he didn't practice all the time. So being able to work in those group settings, get that kind of production group experience is super important. But I would say, also know some of the basics as well that you might have to, either self-study or Udemy or something like that. But just supplement your learning at the boot camp with some common core subjects.
I'd love to hear about your recruitment process, and I know it could be a long conversation, so we'll try to condense it down into maybe even to include some of the timing and some of the steps. So someone starts and they fill out an application online. What's next? Is there a phone screen, in person? Sort of talk us through how someone gets hired in your firm, and maybe some timing in there too for each step.
Yeah, our process over at Intersection is very similar to Kayla's in terms of general process. Call with somebody from talent acquisition. Second, to follow up, more technical type phone screen. If that goes well, we'll follow up with a take-home assignment where when you come in, you'll probably meet with anywhere between, I'd say, 3 to 5 people. All right, go over some of that. What we do is we try to break it up. So one's more of kind of a cultural interview, one's a cross-functional interview with someone that's not on your team directly, but you'll work with them. And then 2 or 3 engineers, possibly followed up by a manager. If we could get it done in one day, we always try to do that because speed is great, but you also want to make sure you're accurate as well. One of the cooler things I think that we've brought into the process is we do a pre and post interview huddle, because I'm sure you've all had that experience of someone running to an interview to see you and they're reading your resume outside the door. Try not to have that happen, because it does all come back to candidate experience in the end. So during a pre-interview huddle, we'll actually talk a little bit more in a small huddle group, almost like a stand-up, and say, hey, this is the candidate, this is why they're here, this is the interview, this is why we're interviewing them. Here's the breakdown of the different parts which each group is going to be assessing for, and then after the interview is done, we try to do it within. If it's an end of day, we'll do it the next morning. If it's the beginning of the day, we'll do it before we leave. Get just a post-interview huddle. I'll collect all the feedback in our system, and then everybody kind of closes their eyes, and I'll say, all right, show of hands. We give kind of thumbs up, thumbs down in the middle, and then we could actually I just voice your opinion, and you could almost help to convince people. Maybe I was but okay, you made some valid points. It's kind of bringing me back up to let's move forward. A little bit more of a democratic way, but I think it's effective and quick and gets the job done.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of just quick answers. We're going to run down the panel, and I have a few different questions that's going to be at each stage. So Joe's giving me is that 4 or 5 minutes? Without my glasses, I can't see. All right, thank you for the 5 minutes. I can't see the difference. All right, so we're gonna go really, really quickly. So we're gonna start at the application step. And let's start with Darcy, and then we're gonna go straight down. So give me one thing that a candidate can avoid in an application that immediately is just gonna not get them to progress to the next step. Give me like one, I know there's a million things. Give me one example that everyone can go home and when they apply for a job tonight, not do that one thing. We're gonna go straight down the panel really quick.
I'd say double check your application. Like the worst thing I could do is like start reading a cover letter and it's not even addressed to our company, it's somebody else. Because so yeah, maybe have a standardized like second and third paragraph, but maybe make your first paragraph really customizable to the job.
We're gonna just do one quick funny example. So give us something crazy that happened on a screening phone call that you suggest someone never does. So they got through the application and now they're on a call with you and something was said or something happened and you're like, oh my God, and then that no one in the room should do.
I think I've had a couple of crazy ones, but I think the best, instead of like a crazy thing, I think it's just like for you guys as candidates, just make sure you do your prep work, okay? And put a little bit of time in beforehand, know a couple products, know what it's about. Because the worst thing I could do is, say, hey, what do you know about us? And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, I just applied because I'm looking for a job. Know a little bit about the company, maybe some of the history, what it's used for, how to use it. I think that would just be super helpful for you guys out there as you interview.